Have you wondered what financial advisors actually think about finances? This is your sneak peek at the conversations within Financial Design Studio. Michelle Smollenberger, the CEO here, will be your host as you go behind the designs.
All right, welcome back to the podcast. Today we have almost our full team, and we are talking about a fun topic, which is vacation or summer travel. And the reason we're talking about this is because this is some area of your finances that sometimes people skip, or they say, oh, we can't spend on a vacation this year, or we don't need to do that. We don't need to take time off work, but we disagree. This is actually something really important personally, but also financially, that you're enjoying the use of your money as you're spending and saving. This is just an important piece of that. So I have the whole team here. So how we are going to start is by asking each person to share your favorite vacation memory as a child, as a kid. So I'll call on each of us so you can hear kind of everybody's voice. Mine will stand out. I'm the only female here. So it's the other guys you'll have to decipher between. All right, Jake, you want to start us off?
Sure. Hey, everybody. Jake Turner, Associate Planner here at Financial Design Studio. I've been on before, so check out some back episodes if you want to learn more. My favorite vacation as a kid, I grew up in central Iowa, and we, for at least 4 or 5 years, would spend a week every summer, load up the station wagon, and head north to the land of 10,000 lakes. And we would stay at a lake up in northern Minnesota sometimes with another family that was also friends of ours that had kids around the same age as my siblings and I. Yeah, and we would just go up there. We had a boat for a couple of years, like a speedboat, so we'd water ski and inner tube and just kind of screw around for a week. And now later in life, talking to my parents, learning what they were doing on that vacation has been also eye-opening. But yeah, that's a lot of fond memories of that from probably age, I don't know, like 8 through 12 or 13.
That's a really good one. That's great. All right, Steve, you're up next.
There's a lot that come to mind, whether it was like a formal trip or summer camp, jumping on a plane. There's all different ones that come to mind, but the one that kind of stood out the most was one summer we tent camped in the mountains in Denver. So it combines a lot of things: being outdoors, being in the mountains, camping. We fished, so we would catch our own rainbow trout, fillet them, and then cook them over the fire that night. So fishing, camping, fire, woods. So as a kid growing up, I don't know, that kind of checks all the boxes.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Oh, that sounds fun.
That does sound fun.
That's awesome.
A couple of outdoors ones. This is fun. Mm-hmm. All right. Trevor, what about you?
Yeah, so Trevor Meyer here, also one of the financial advisors here at Financial Design Studio. But yeah, I guess favorite childhood vacation, a little bit outdoors, but not quite to the extent that Jake or Steve shared. I guess mine was an Alaskan cruise when I was probably 10 or 11. I wish I could remember how old I was. My parents treated us to a really amazing, wonderful vacation. It was during the summer. And I remember this still so vividly 25 years later. And one of the most favorite things that we did, and I looked up recently because my wife and I are starting to plan our 10-year anniversary. Nice. And one of the things I'm trying to nudge her towards is maybe doing an Alaskan vacation. But on the Alaskan cruise, one of the excursions we went on was something called the Taku Lodge, where you literally get off the boat, you jump on a seaplane, and they let me, as like a 10 or 11-year-old kid, quote unquote, fly the plane. No, I wasn't actually flying the plane, so no one was actually in danger. But they made it look like I was able to fly the plane. So I was up in the co-pilot seat. But then you fly into this dock area, and there's this lodge. It's called the Taku Lodge. And they just caught salmon that morning. You go on like a walk, and you see bears. And it was one of the most mesmerizing and just amazing moments of my life. And I still, to this day, would love to go back to Alaska on an Alaskan cruise. So
wow. That's cool. That's really great.
Where'd you launch from?
I couldn't tell you. So I can't tell you any like the details of the actual like dates and stuff like that. But the one thing that always stuck out to me was Taku Lodge. So I did unfortunately waste a lot of time on the kids' game area, so playing a lot of video games. So I wish I would have gone back. So maybe when my wife and I go back for a second time, we don't waste that time.
Oh, that's good. I'm Michelle, and a financial advisor here at FDS as well. And we did a lot. We did more road trips. Some of the fun ones. So we'd road trip to see family, but also every summer, once we were older, maybe when we started, I remember early teens, my mom was a rural carrier, so she delivered mail to people like in the country, not a city carrier where you like walk to people's houses and deliver mail. And they would have conventions, so rural carriers had conventions, but this was huge. Like it was in a different city every year, so different state, different city. So I was from Kansas, and I remember going to like Wisconsin or Tennessee. So those were big places. But there was like events or activities the whole time planned out for the kids. So while they were having their meetings, we were just having fun and got to see like a lot of cool things in like really big towns. They would kind of like pick the highlights of each city, and we would go do those. So for me as a kid, we'd load up the Suburban, not the station wagon. So it's like taking us back.
We graduated to Suburban eventually.
Right?
Yeah.
But it was fun. Yeah. So road trips, because I think so this was one question, is even the journey of getting to the destination is like part of the trip. So, I mean, I remember it being exciting to like pick a road trip game at the store that you got to like, that was new, or pick your favorite snack that you don't normally have. So like even fun stuff like that.
Yeah, like station wagon definitely brings it back. The old Chevrolet.
Yep.
Facing out the back
Roadmaster,
window.
Yeah, turning back and
Trying not to vomit.
rock, scissors, paper for your brother and sister who gets to sit backwards and stare at people, or
Exactly.
get the truckers to honk the horn, or playing road trip bingo, all of that.
Yeah, bingo, the signs, ABCs, going through all the alphabet.
Yeah,
signs.
we're big license plate. Yeah,
Yep.
as you're road tripping, see how many of the 50 states
the
license
states.
plates you can spy.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Okay. Well, that was really helpful because you can kind of get to know each of us a little bit through some of these memories. This is basically what we're going to be talking about today. So just sharing a lot of our experiences. You may have heard the highlight, but there's a lot of experiences then as adults. How do we vacation versus maybe how we did as kids? Things we've learned. So we're going to try and throw out anything we've learned, kind of a, hey, heads up, reminder, don't do this or do this. So like any good financial advisor, you would always budget for your family vacation, or do you?
This is
Okay.
Jake. I think, I mean, definitely. I think this is just smart way to manage money. You know, vacations are not, you know, it's going to be a pretty big ticket item usually, right? It's going to be more than your probably groceries for the month or anything else. So I think it makes sense. Don't extend yourself more than you can afford to spend, and have a plan. Yeah, whether that's, you know, you're saving a little bit into your savings account is earmarked for vacations every year, or you've got a bonus coming up that's, you know, we're going to put half in savings and the other half is just fun for this upcoming vacation. Figure out what you really value, where you want to spend money on, whether it's, you know, the travel, the hotel, the food, whatever you're doing, the activities, and make sure you've got some cushion there to give yourself a good time without stressing budget.
Ooh,
Yeah.
so you want to enjoy it. So that's why you
Yeah.
budget, so you can enjoy it. You know, you're not overspending.
Yes.
I think what we've done is we've kind of broken it out into like the travel aspect. So a couple different categories: travel, the lodging, the food, the entertainment.
Yeah.
And kind of broke it out that way and figured out how much are we going to spend, where do we want to spend more, where do we want to spend less. If we're going to be outside or active all the time, then the hotel maybe isn't that important unless it's in a location where we want to be using the pool more. So kind of breaking it into those categories has been helpful for us.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, and this is Trevor here. I want to second the whole idea of the budget, but actually for a different reason, although, Jake, you kind of highlighted it a little bit, is when you budget and you set aside those funds, you're giving yourself permission to spend. And so I try and do this for just about every vacation that we do, because let's say you get to your destination. I'll pick on another vacation that we did down in Tennessee with my wife's family years ago, where, you know, we budgeted and said, hey, we know we were going to spend X amount of dollars. So we were going to do this one experience, and we already knew ahead of time this is how much it's going to cost. So it's not as if you get to the place you do this experience, you see the prices, and you're like, oh my goodness, how much, like, I wasn't ready for this, or what, and there's that stress, there's that tension. So by setting the budget, by setting the plan, you've already said, I'm going to spend this. And, Steve, as you're saying, where are those experiences that you want to spend, whether it's your lodging, whether it's the travel to there, or the actual experience itself. There are a whole lot of things that you can do. So myself personally, we do set a budget for our vacations. I get personally very stressed out when I don't get to set a budget. Right now, I'm actually in the middle of a adoption with my wife. So we're going to be adopting a child internationally, and one of the things that we've been told is you're going to have a very short notice, basically a 2-week notice with which you have to travel. And that is actually something that's really challenging for me, because I like to look up, all right, what are the flight tickets going to be? Where are we going to stay? And I don't get that option. I don't get that choice. So that's something I'm personally working through to try and find a good resolution towards. But budgets are great, not just from the aspect of having a plan, but also giving yourself the freedom to spend it.
So Trevor, just to help us understand that a little bit better, when you're budgeting like a normal trip or vacation, is it, here's the total dollar amount that we have to spend and we figure out as we go, or are you kind of breaking it out?
Yeah, I personally like to break it out. It's different on every trip, right? So the Tennessee trip, for example, we said, okay, we want to spend a little bit more on lodging because of the fact that we're bringing so many people into a single building. So we want to make sure, people aren't just sleeping on couches and the floor and stuff like that. You want to make sure everyone has, a bed to sleep on to make the experience enjoyable. Whereas there are other experiences, say maybe we're going camping and, the campground, we don't need a fancy spot because we're going to go hiking every day. We're going to go riding bikes. So we would rather spend the money on that. So there is an overall amount, but I like the idea of breaking it into lodging, experience, food, other activities. So
Okay, that's helpful. I think there's also something you guys have kind of mentioned is you might spend different amounts different years. So you might say like every 5 years we take a huge trip and we spend a lot, versus every year we might do a weekend trip or a week to go camping and we spend less. So it can vary between years. It doesn't always have to be a lot.
Yeah, definitely. And I think what Trevor was talking about, the permission to spend, is a good point. And maybe we don't use the word budget, because I think, at least in my mind, budget can have a negative connotation, like your restriction, like you're restricting yourself. So maybe just think of it as, this is earmarked money that we're just going to spend freely and on things we love, and just that's what it's for. Who cares? Have fun.
The fun pot.
Yeah, the fun pot. The fun pot.
Yeah, it's good. Okay, so I'm going to challenge you guys. This is like a mini lightning round. If you were to plan the cheapest trip, let's say it's going to be a week. If you were to plan the cheapest vacation, what would you, what types of things do you think of? What come to mind?
This is Trevor. So the cheapest that comes to mind right now is a camping experience, probably up in Wisconsin.
Drivable.
Drivable. Yep. So because we're based here in Illinois, so whether it's Wisconsin or Michigan, sometime during the spring, so it's not too hot. But then we would bring our bikes. My wife and I absolutely love to go bike riding when we're on vacation, and it's just for a long weekend. So there's already a scheduled holiday. So we had that planned, and we're going to have to take the time off anyway, and we get to bring Bo with. Bo is our son. So we don't have to worry about childcare.
That's good. That's a good one. I think that's a normal one. Yeah, like when I think of kind of spending less, it is, if this is how much I have to spend and this is the time I'm going to be gone. You start, just like Steve, you kind of said, you break it up into the buckets of, we need to sleep somewhere. How are we going to get there? Yeah. What are we going to eat while we're doing? What are we going to do when we're there? Or is the place the activity? So we're just getting there and that's kind of free. That's where I think then you start in each category. You're like, how can I do this for the cheapest if we want to? Or do we spend more here? So once you kind of do each category, okay, so like on the cheaper end, now if you were to say, I'm going to go all out and we're going to have a great vacation for a week again, what do you think of then?
For me, for a week, I'm thinking I'm flying first class to a 5-star resort on the beach in Hawaii somewhere.
Okay.
Wow, nice.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Okay. Isn't that such a wide range, like from camping
Yes.
to I'm going to fly, I'm not going to drive. And think about this.
Both super fun, though.
It is still, and this is the thing, it's still fun. It's just a different adventure. And what's interesting is, and this is like kind of like how we spend money. Like you're saying, I'm going to drive. Okay, so you're spending your time to get there
Exactly.
instead of paying more to fly there. Okay. I'm giving up a little bit more, or I might be tired when I get there. So even those factors kind of come into play. But how we just view them differently. So I think even when we think about vacation, I think you have to think about like, what's the purpose of this one? Is this a short, we just need to have fun as a family? Or are we trying to see things? Are we trying to have memorable experiences? I think when Emma had just finished second grade, they were talking about volcanoes. They had studied volcanoes. Steve and I, on our honeymoon, did Maui, Hawaii, and we had been back once for an anniversary, and then we wanted to take her. We were like, oh, she'll love it here. She had been taking swimming lessons. I think we said we would take her once she could swim because, like, the waves, once we knew she'd be fine. So we planned that trip, and that was longer. So we did, like, a house. The reason that we did that trip was because there was the volcanoes there, the dormant volcanoes, but you could go and drive up to see them. And that was just like cool because she had just studied it. So it was like top of mind. And I just feel like when you can put those things together, I mean, it's almost like you remember that so much better. And you come back, and I remember the next year at school, she was telling her teacher, oh, I just went and saw a volcano. And I just think that helps kids remember so much more. And so it was just kind of cool when we could pair together something she was learning with a real experience. That's one I think of when I think going all out and doing something bigger. That was kind of one of those trips.
Yeah, I think one thing that comes to mind is as you're sharing, you use the word experience a lot, right? And I've had some discussions with various other people and family members too of, if you look back, is it a whole lot easier to remember experiences or the things, right? So I can't tell you what I received for my 12th, 13th, or 4th birthday or Christmas or this and that. But I can tell you the vacations we went on. Yeah. So understanding the fact that experiences matter from a long-term perspective, we're talking 20, 25 years later, I still remember certain things. Spending a little bit more money on the experience that's going to last a lifetime is important.
Yeah, you probably don't remember how much you spent either or care.
No.
Yeah. And experiences, they kind of like get better with age too. Like you look back fondly and you think about those different places that you went, maybe different cultures you experienced, kind of gives you a better, view of the world. But also those memories kind of like, I'm thinking of a wine reference here. Like they get better with age as well.
You're right.
Like you keep telling them and maybe embellishing a little bit here and there, but pretty soon it becomes, your own reality. So it's a great memories to have.
Well, that's good. I just want to get all of these thoughts from your mind. So things that people would be asking. We're going to kind of do different ways, modes of transportation, your tips and tricks, like tips, things to hey, remember this, or I learned because of a bad thing here. Okay, so hotel, we'll start with that. What are things people should remember, ways they can save money, things they need to think about that they may not know?
I'll go. This is Jake. So I would say if well, first of all, if you decide that you want to stay in a hotel, you could also consider your short-term rentals like Airbnb or VRBO. Just make sure that you understand what all the other underlying fees are going to be under there. Same thing with hotels though, and resorts. Like they'll give you one price and then they'll lock in a bunch of other fees. But I would say one tip or trick is if you haven't, subscribed to their loyalty programs, whether it's, the Marriott properties, which have gotten a lot, or Bonvoy, I guess it is now, or Hilton or IHG, because even if you don't travel a ton, if there's just so many properties under these kind of big umbrellas that you can always find one in most places you're going to go. And the more time and nights that you've had in these different properties, you're going to get, potential upgrades, discounts, better experiences, free breakfast. Like you'll be able to kind of optimize your dollars as time goes on. So I would say look for the loyalty programs there.
That's good. Yeah, even just sign up for them.
Yeah,
before you go.
Sometimes you'll get something just for signing up.
Yeah, that's good. All right, I'm going to say hotels because I had this recent one. I was spending time with my sisters around Dallas, and we booked a hotel. There were a lot of soccer or baseball games going on in that area that weekend. We booked a hotel. No, I did not book it, actually. My sister did. Through a third-party booking site. Let's just say the hotel was full. Because we booked through a third-party site, our rooms were the first to kind of get used up. So we didn't have a room to stay. So we got there and they're like, "Oh, I'm sorry." They tried to reach out through the third-party site, but the third-party site did not reach out. So booking directly through the hotel, when you do that, then your room is secured, but through a third-party site, it could be given up. So
Exactly.
it's just a good reminder, because I know we're all trying to save money, but just a good reminder that sometimes when you save money, you give up other things. So that was something, I don't think I knew that, actually. So that was something I learned.
Yeah, sometimes also even booking early, you lock it in. So because baseball teams travel and sports and there's conventions, things will get booked up throughout the whole area, and you can't find anything. So booking it early, at least you know where you're going to be, and then can figure out everything around that.
Yeah, it's actually a good point, Steve. I think that's probably the first thing that we do when we're starting to think about vacation, because timing is when are we going to go? Yeah. So this is probably one of maybe after you do the budget, this is kind of the second big thing is when summer comes, I kind of write out our whole calendar, the things we know, the things, the camps Emma's going to have, or events we have that we're going to be involved in. I write that all out, and then you can kind of see, okay, this is a week where we're free. Okay, here's a potential time. And sometimes that could be, usually for us, it's right after school is out. We try and go and get back before everybody else is out of school. So that's worked really well. Or it's later in the summer. But that's something that that's kind of one way that we'll narrow in what type of vacation or where we go based on how long we have.
Yeah, based on those categories, those 4 that I kind of shared, lodging could be a vacation deal breaker.
Right.
Depending what you're doing, but if you don't have a place to stay, that changes everything.
It's probably could be the biggest line item too of the whole vacation is the lodging, depending on where you're going.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I think sometimes that's kind of one of the first things that we'll look at too. Is there, if it's VRBO or Airbnb, you start to look in an area, and you also want to be careful because you may find something that's a great deal price-wise, but there's a reason. So it's just really being careful that you're not in a neighborhood you may not want to be in, or it may not have all the amenities that you're wanting. So
read those reviews.
That's good. All right.
One other thing I can think about, not so much hotels or lodging related, but actually airfare, just because that's probably more area what I'm looking at right now with our potential upcoming trip. But there are lots of things that are coming about nowadays about skip lagging, where this is in essence you purchase a ticket that has a layover in a certain city that you want to go to, that goes on to another city, and the reason you do it is because it's cheaper than actually going on to the final destination. Now, there are lots of risks with that. As I feel like every single time I have this podcast, I talk about risks. But there are risks of not getting your bags, or having the flight or the airline cancel your flight because you didn't carry on through the destination. So one of those things to be mindful of, it's great to save money, but be mindful of the potential risks that you have associated with that. So that's one. The other one too is, at least with certain airlines in the US, you can look at purchasing a flight ticket and then continually monitor that flight. So it's not uncommon. If I know I'm going to have a trip in 6 to 9 months, I'll purchase a ticket right now and say, okay, at minimum, that's my high price. And then you watch that ticket price, week over week over week. If it drops, a lot of airlines may allow you to change that ticket, limited or even no change fees, and lock in that lower price. So, but more often than not, you have to do that directly through the airline. It's really hard to do that through a third-party site. Again, there are risks, there are other costs with that as well, but it's not necessarily a one-and-done decision. You can make a decision, reevaluate, and update it down the road.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. One other, I like what Steve was saying, and I totally agree. Plan ahead, book the lodging early. But if you can live on the edge a little bit, there's an app that I've used a couple times. It's called Hotels Tonight. And that's essentially, again, I don't love this, but I have a friend who absolutely does. Bigger cities where you're going to find a place to stay. So I'm thinking Chicago, New York. I've done it in Las Vegas. And literally, the day we're leaving, or maybe the night before, we'll look. And because what these hotels will do is they'll drastically drop prices if they have availability, like a $500 room down to $100.
Yep.
And so if you have some flexibility and want to roll the dice a little bit, it's kind of a fun way to. You could really get some killer deals. You could end up there's some risk you're taking there as well.
Pay full
out.
price
Yeah.
plus.
But yeah, we've done it a couple times and it's worked out. It's worked out good both times. So
Okay.
hotels tonight.
Okay. Next, airline travel. Trevor, you kind
Oh,
of
sorry,
talked
I
about this.
already
It's
jumped
okay.
ahead.
You were nudging us in that direction. I have to say that Steve is probably. You could probably tell us, like, what are the best ways to spend time in an airport? Because growing up, you guys flew standby because your dad worked for the airlines.
Actually, my whole family,
That's
grandparents on both sides, aunt and uncles on both sides. All my family worked for United, so we would fly standby around the world, kind of on a drop of a hat. We've done backpack trips, we've done field trips, we've done anything. But with that is the risk of not making the flight due to limited seats, or the whole party can't go, so we're split up. So yeah, there's been plenty of nights where we've slept on the floor, slept on the chairs, ran up and down Denver airport just staying entertained. Yeah, so airfare has not been one of my favorite thoughts when it comes to travel.
Yeah, you just don't want to get stuck because I still think it's fun. I'm like, oh, this is so much fun. We could get on a plane for free if there's a seat. But you're right. So you really have to be careful because you could not get back. I remember when we were dating, United has had different programs. So you can either choose like a couple people to be your person that can go anywhere, whenever, if there's a seat, or you could do like buddy passes. So it's changed over the years. And so I remember, I think at that time there was buddy passes. And so I could fly to Kansas home. And so that was United. But then I got credit card points through American. So there was always like a United and an American flight that would go out of Wichita at the same time. And so if I couldn't get on standby, I would try standby. And if I couldn't, then I would just book a last minute with miles on American. So I was like, oh, I always knew. So it was kind of like a way of playing the game, but I always had like a backup as long as it wasn't like full. But so that was kind of like, that's one way. I think, Jake, you were kind of talking about like with miles, if you use them, like that's what we do, even with United, saving them up kind of for vacations.
Yeah, and that's for airline travel too. I would say, even if you don't necessarily fly one airline the whole time, just enroll in their rewards programs, so at least you'll get credit for it. You'll start building status. I'm a huge fan of credit card rewards as well. Even more maybe than like like not an airline specific credit card, but like Chase Preferred has their own hub. Amex has their own way that you can use points, and you can often transfer 1-to-1 to certain airlines, so you can use them that way, or hotels or rental cars. You can get cash back. Again, this is only with the caveat if you're going to use your credit card that you are paying it off in full and on time every month, so you're never paying interest. But if you can do that, I mean, that's what my wife and I do. We just use our credit card to pay for everything, and those points add up fast.
Yes.
And we were actually able to fly to Greece last fall, business class round trip for free, just on money that we'd spent on airline points. So again, we had to, there's times we were a little flexible because you can get one fare that's half of another, just based on the time and the day that you're doing it. But we were able to do it, and so I think that's something we would have never paid for those tickets. It would have been crazy, but that's a way to do it. So check that out if you're not taking advantage of those. Can be a great way to save money. Oh, another thing I like to do when I fly, it's kind of nerdy, but I'll look up seat maps for the specific airline or the specific aircraft that I'm going to be flying on once I book the ticket. And, I can't remember the name of the website, but if you Google it, it'll be at the top. And it'll show you, it'll rate each seat on the plane. Like, don't sit here. Heavy traffic right next to the bathroom. This one, there's no window. Like you can see exactly, this limited recline, you'll know exactly. So then you can make sure that you get at least an optimized seat within whatever class you
behind the wing
ticket class you booked.
Yeah, no, that's great.
So you're saying financial planners like to look at a lot of data.
Everything. We plan it
Shocker.
all. I'm thinking, okay, so road trip pointers. Road trips. Any tips there? One I can think of, not so much of a road trip, but kind of to do with cars, rental cars. So this could fall into any category because sometimes on a road trip, people will rent a car instead of using their own. So I remember, again, going to Hawaii. This was kind of during COVID or at the end of it. We used a site called Turo where people rent their personal cars. You can rent from them because rental cars were expensive.
It was like half the price.
It was like a fraction of the price. Now, with all of these things, just be careful because your auto insurance probably will not cover that. So you need to just check all of those things, which we did. We asked our agent before. So just questions like that, make sure you know. Thankfully, it was a really good experience. It worked out. We had a good person we were renting from, but that's another option, too, for that to save money.
Otherwise, with road trips and just vehicles in general, I can see my wife, Courtney, rolling her eyes right now, doing pre-trip inspections. So just in the same way that airline pilots, actually literally you see the pilots walking around the aircraft to make sure that, hey, there's nothing that is out of miss. You don't want to wake up in the morning and say, okay, we need to go get on a road trip, and you see that your car is leaking oil, right? There are lots of, inspection lists that you can find online if you kind of Google them. We might try and find and source one to link in the show notes, but I have my own personal list that I run through. Just simple things. Checking coolant, checking oil, checking the tire pressures. How much tread depth do I have on the tires? When was the last time I changed the oil on the vehicle? Is there any thing that might be amiss in terms of just normal driving the car? Because the last thing you want to do is, especially on a road trip when you're in the middle of nowhere, 50 miles from any sort of service or spot that can help you, have a breakdown, and now you're stuck.
Yeah, I think we usually schedule something kind of like a week or two in advance to get all that stuff done. And we'll say like we're going on a road trip, but then we also kind of do it like a week before so you can see if anything happens after. Sometimes I remember in the past someone forgot to put like the oil cap back on, and then a day later you've got issues. So yeah, kind of giving yourself a little bit of time before you do it. That's a good
And that pre-flight check, Trevor, that's actually something my dad's always told me to do when we rent a car, is walk around it, check it out, turn the lights on, check all the levels. Because as soon as you walk or drive through that gate, it's kind of on you to figure out or return. So better to check all of that and get it handled before you leave.
Yeah. The quick funny story that I have that where I failed to do a proper check. I was actually on a road trip with my best friend at the time, back when we were still in college, and it was in the middle of the night. We just stopped to get gas, and for whatever reason, my normal beams went out at the same time. So I thought it was a fuse issue, the whole bunch of things.
Personal car?
Yeah, my personal vehicle. Both headlights went out. It turned out it wasn't a fuse, just both headlights happened to burn out at the exact same time as soon as I turned the car back on after we got fuel. Well, as a young college kid, thinking, well, I need to get to my destination, we're not stopping in the middle of the night, to the great dismay of so many other drivers on the road, we basically rode down the road with our high beams on, and I turned off every now and again when people will start getting too upset, but then I didn't have headlights, so I turned them back on. But just kind of funny stories of not my best decision ever, but that's why
that's just bad luck.
Well, yeah, bad luck, but yeah, we should have stopped is the good call, but we didn't. So those pre-trip inspections are helpful.
Well, my one road trip tip is obvious, but I got burned on this once, is to, when you're pumping gas, stay by your car. And I used to be in sales, so I would drive all day, every day, like 50,000 miles a year. And I would always get to the gas station, start the pump, and run in and use the restroom or whatever I was doing there. And just, worked out fine. We were road tripping from Illinois to Montana in 2020. My wife and I both really had to go to the bathroom. We stopped, in middle of nowhere, South Dakota, pumped the gas, and came back in, start cruising, getting back on the freeway. And I'm like, why does this say empty? Like, I just pumped, I saw it was like $70 if we just filled the tank. And so I have her check our credit card, online. She's like, oh yeah, definitely charged. And I'm like, wow. So we went inside to use the restroom, and whoever was next to us said,
you paid it forward.
I paid it forward. So I was like, oh, well, because there's not, if you've ever driven through South Dakota, it's not densely populated. Yeah. So luckily there was another stop like 10 miles further, so we didn't run out of gas. But I was like, I guess they needed it more than we did that day. It was funny.
That's tough, yeah.
Yeah, I think road trip, our favorite has been, we planned a road trip, and this was, it was kind of like the trip was part of the journey. So the destination was like, okay, just staying in Florida at a house with a pool. So this was more kind of a relaxing vacation, and Emma could swim like when she was younger. But we did stuff like along the way. So we'd stop, I think maybe like every 8 hours, because it was like 24 hours of driving. I feel like if we just went straight through, we saw things, along the way, and that was kind of fun. It was kind of like Georgia peaches, and we stopped at like the Creation Aviation Museum in Kentucky and just like stuff like this along the way. So it was actually like fun just to like that part was part of the journey. So.
The world's largest ball of yarn.
Right, exactly. The biggest chair. There's so many things. So that was actually kind of fun.
No, that's cool.
That was a good one. Okay, I think a good way to close this out might be maybe like your worst experience, maybe like the worst thing that's happened. And you might have already shared this. I'll start. This is when, so like growing up, we really did road trips. We didn't fly, or I didn't fly. And so my first flight was, I was in high school, junior, senior, maybe senior, and going to one of these conventions, like I've mentioned, coming home. So I was flying home from New Jersey. So I had booked a flight, a round trip ticket. And again, I've never flown before, so I booked this round trip ticket. The only flight I needed to use was the return trip. So I was like, I'll just book a round trip and I'll only use half of it, right? Well, if you don't use the first trip there, they cancel the whole thing. Yeah. Again, I had never flown, was doing this on my own, so I will admit, like, just pure lack of knowledge, like not knowing. The funny thing, not so funny, but I had just like gotten a scholarship at this convention, so it's like $1,000, and so you can guess right where that $1,000 went to, right towards that one-way ticket at the last minute to get on the plane. But I learned the hard way, but that was one thing I'm like, okay, if you're going to do round trip, fine if you're only going there. And it was because it was cheaper for a round trip ticket. This was years ago. So, yeah, that's my trip of shame. Anybody else? Bad experiences? No?
The only one that comes to mind is when I was probably a teenager. My dad was working in California at the time. We lived in Maryland. So he would actually commute back and forth every week. But one week during the summer, we actually traveled out to California and visited him and went up to San Francisco, just viewed all the sites, Alcatraz, Golden Gate, just all that stuff out there, right? And we park in a parking garage and then go and get dinner somewhere. And we're just, enjoying our night, enjoying our evening, this and that. Well, we get back to the parking garage, and apparently there's a parking garage on one side of the street and there's a parking garage on the other side of the street. Unfortunately, what we didn't realize was the parking garage that we pulled into closed at, I want to say it was like 9 o'clock at night. So it wasn't like a super late at night. It was, but it was closed. And we're basically in a situation where we're flying out the next day, of course, because all the days you have to do. We're flying out the next day, so we need to get our car. So long story short, we ended up getting the car. Someone across the street used to work at the other garage and was able to get us in, and we were able to get the car out to get to our flight. But it was a highly stressful moment to say, okay, if this leads to that and that leads to that, how are we getting home? But it works out.
I remember one time we did a backpack trip as a family.
Where?
Hawaii, actually.
Nice.
It was one of those that we're going for just a handful of days, real quick. Flight was delayed, got in late. I remember we got the car. That was even delayed. The whole day was just delayed. And we got there and ended up where we were staying wasn't available that evening, or something came up where we didn't have a place to stay. So we ended up, as a family, sleeping in our rental car. And in Hawaii, it'll rain on and off just because it's a humid location, and it was raining the whole night, so we couldn't even put the windows down. But ended up too bad you're in Hawaii.
Right.
But so it ended up being kind of a what could be considered like a bad situation turned up being fun, and we kind of look back at it and laugh.
Yeah, that's funny.
That's cool.
Yeah, no, those are great. I think there's something you always learn. I mean, we're just throwing some free stuff in here. When you travel with other people, families, friends, it's always good to set time, like so that you guys go and do your own thing for a little bit, and then that way you're not spending every moment of every day together. Because
in case not
we all
everybody's
know
a
what
beach
happens.
person or
Exactly.
a foodie or
maybe it's like an every other day thing. Hey, we're gonna spend this by ourselves.
Yeah.
That's always helpful.
We learned that. We traveled with a couple to Switzerland a few years ago, and Switzerland's hilly, and we were in the mountains, and lots of hiking that's quite strenuous, and was really not their jam. So we learned maybe pick a different vacation if we're going to travel with those two again.
Yeah. On the theme of airlines, I remember, so Steve, one trip we did to South America for a friend's wedding, and then we were also visiting some family in Brazil. We were flying out of Florida, And our flight kind of left late, so we had to connect, and we were like running to our gate, which we were like, oh, we made it. So we were flying to Brazil first. We're like, oh, we made it, but our luggage did not. And so I didn't, you don't think about these things when you're like in the rush. We just need to get there. But then on the other side, we didn't have our luggage for a week, I think, that first week when we went to Brazil, because then we were going to Bolivia for the wedding. So we went to Brazil. Thankfully, the family we were going with, it was like a mission, and so there was a lot of people that lived there. So they had like a missionary barrel we could live out of from clothes. But I do remember learning one word in Portuguese, because we would go back to the airport to see if our luggage had come in, is bagagem. If you ever need to get your baggage or your luggage, it was like in Manaus, Portuguese. That was the word that, like, where is our bagagem? So my cousins knew Portuguese. That was helpful. But it was just like those funny things you don't think about. Just get on the plane, just connect to get to your place, but you do want your luggage to go with you too. So just little things like that, you learn along the way. All of this is just meant to be kind of help you to remember that, like, the memories, all the experiences can be in the journey, going to the places, seeing the things that you're trying to help your kids learn or kind of have memories for themselves. And even some of these harder experiences, I think you can still laugh at, you can still remember. So we hope this has kind of helped you to get to know us a little bit more, to hear a little bit of some of the memories and some of the tips or tricks or things we've learned along the way. I guess anybody have any final parting thoughts that you think of? Okay, Jake's got something. He does have something.
Always.
I know what it is.
If you're still here, shoot us an email, podcast@financialdesignstudio.com. If you have any financial specific questions or things you'd like us to elaborate on the show, we're happy to do it in one of our upcoming question and answer episodes. So podcast@financialdesignstudio.com. Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you, Jake.
I might just add in there, I'm curious to hear other people's experiences too, just whether they're good or bad, just as it relates to vacations and how you think about vacations. Just
what
because,
did we miss?
I would love to learn more and just see, I just love to be learning. So if people have other tips and tricks or awesome experiences, let's hear them.
Yeah, because we've heard some good ones recently from some clients that just went on kind of like some last minute trips, invited from family and stuff, and have been like amazing experiences that they've seen some really cool things. Yes, please share those with us. Questions or experiences that you want to share, we do read them all. Podcast@financialdesignstudio.com. And thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thanks for listening. To find any links or resources related to this episode, check out our show notes. Your host was Michelle Smallenberger, a certified financial planner and CEO. The guests featured are from Financial Design Studio, a team of experienced, fiduciary, fee-only advisors based in Chicago. Anna Lewis is the executive producer of the Behind the Designs podcast. And as always, for more information about Financial Design Studio and who we are, check out our website, financialdesignstudio.com. And final note, no content discussed on this podcast should be taken as financial advice. Financial Design Studio accepts no responsibility for your individual choices. We'll see you in the next episode.